Shalom. It's a great honor to be here, and indeed a very great honor to be the only Asian sitting on the panel. I'm actually from Hong Kong, which is part of China, but as you know, there's one country, two systems. So Hong Kong is part of China, and yet on the other hand, most of the institutions are really very Western. We Chinese has a great admiration of the Jewish people. A lot of times when we talk about among ourselves, we ask ourselves the question, why in China, a country with more than 70 times the population of the Jewish people worldwide, has so much fewer Nobel Prize winners? And clearly there is a lot of things that we have to learn from you. And I hope that with exchanges like this, we'll understand each other, we'll trade with each other to the benefit of both people. Just now, the previous panelists talked about the rise of China, and indeed, my prediction is that China will continue to rise. After all, we have been following the model of reform and opening up the economy. Reform really is making use and learning from the market economy, and opening up is really to globalize. And with the diligence and intelligence of the Chinese people, I believe that our economy would continue to grow and grow at a relatively fast pace. People are making the prediction that we'll continue to grow at 7% for the next decade, if not longer. But clearly we have to also change the growth model. Instead of just growing by investing heavily by the government in infrastructure and in many other things, and by exporting to the rest of the world, we have to also increase our domestic consumption. After all, our share of the world export is large enough. You can't go on exporting indefinitely to a market that may be already quite saturated. And as we change the growth model, which may be difficult, but I think there is every likelihood that we'll succeed, because just by thinking about urbanization, there will be a lot of room for growth. Right now, only half of the Chinese people live in the urban areas, compared to an average developed country of 75 to 85%. There will be a lot of growth, because an urbanized consumer consumes about 6 times as much as a rural consumer, and also the kinds of things that they'll buy would be vastly different. They'll be buying a lot more services, which will drive domestic consumption. So as we Chinese people want to live better, we need also peace, because we recognize that any war will slow down the growth, and it will not fulfill our Chinese dream of letting our people live better. Clearly, we also have to clean up the environment, because living better is not just about eating more, but also living better. As one of the previous panelists have commented, China doesn't really seek to be a hegemony. And as you know, the defense spending of China is only a fraction of that of the United States. There is a Chinese saying, and I think it serves us well, and that is, we will seek similarities with the rest of the world, but we will let the differences to coexist. China is a huge market, and I encourage all of you to trade with China, because they can, with the 7% growth a year, provide a lot of growth also for your industries. But China is also different, as somebody has commented. The difference between, say, the United States, which you can represent the West, and China is that whenever you see a problem, in the United States, the first thing that you think about is the legal issue. Then you think about the logic. The last thing that you think about would be the relationship. In China, it's exactly the reverse. You think about the relationship, then the logic, and then the law. Hong Kong, because of our past as a colony of Britain, can be a great place to help you to explore the vast Chinese market, because we do understand the West, and yet we are part of China. This conference is really about tomorrow. And as I think about tomorrow, as many people said, tomorrow belongs to the young people. I have a young family. My eldest is only 10. And if I put myself into my children's shoes, you can arrive at a conclusion that would not be too comforting. Because the young people will be facing a lot of challenges, and the challenges at least will come from two areas. One is employment, the other is a widening gap of wealth. And these two so-called phenomena, or the end result, is not just the kind of doing of any single government, but at least in my mind of 5 global forces. The first one is globalization. With a globalized world, if you have a good product, you can sell to the whole world. A lot of us are using devices like the iPhone or the BlackBerry, which is a great example that if you have a good product, the world is your market. Yet on the other hand, if you don't have good ideas or good products, you can only compete with your only thing, and that is by lowering your wage. And the bad news is you're not competing with your labor. You're competing with your cheapest person in the rest of the world. Second factor is new technology. New technology is making our life a lot easier. We live a lot better than our ancestors. But on the other hand, as we all know, new technology is also threatening jobs, because we all recognize that new technology already has eliminated a lot of jobs, particularly the lower skilled jobs. There are predictions that in the next 15 years, 2 billion job opportunities would be eliminated. People talk about Google cars. As we know, Google car has been on the road for about 2 years. And as you know, the Google car has no driver. It is probably as safe, if not safer, than all of us, at least myself driving the car. Now imagine if this world, all the cars, all the buses, all the taxis, all the lorries would not have driver. How many job opportunities would it erase? Also, right now in Hong Kong, we are lucky that we do have domestic helpers. But in future, the domestic helper may be robots. So technology, while it is enriching our lives, is also eliminating a lot of jobs. Granted, new technology will also create a lot of jobs, but it will be job opportunities not for the same people that will be displaced by new technology. The third global trend is the huge debt burden that is faced by many Western countries, and indeed I will extend it to most countries that would have the one person, one vote system. Most people or most politicians under this system would stand up and say, I'm running for office for your welfare, or more so for the welfare of our children. But they know that the first thing that they have to do is to get into office, or when they're in office, to maintain office. Human nature is such that everybody wants to take more and give less. So the best way to secure a vote in the immediate term is to promise more welfare or lower tax. Hence, the huge debt burden that we are seeing. Now, with debt burden, all we are doing is, instead of really caring for the welfare of our young children, is to really settle them with debt. We are really robbing our younger generation to enrich ourselves today. This is actually a phenomenon that is not new. Professor Alexander Taylor, a Scottish professor in 1886, remarked that democracy would continue to exist until the voters one day discover that they can vote themselves a prize out of the national treasury. That on top of this debt burden, we have the fourth trend, and that's what I call the printing of money. With the global financial crisis, the Western world is printing a lot of money that at a speed that we have not seen in history. Witness the growth of the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and now the Bank of Japan. With A one-person, one-vote system, given the same psychology, governments in these countries are fast in printing money, but may be slow in retracting them. And if that is the case, what we'll see would be, one, a devaluation of paper currency, meaning if there's more money supply than the growth of the real assets or real economy, the value, the purchasing power of such money would be depreciated. Right now, we are not seeing inflation, partly because the velocity of money is low, thanks to Basel III and the deleveraging of the banks. But once this process of deleveraging has stopped, then the velocity of money may increase, and then we have inflation. Now notice, if this happens, then on the one hand, we are seeing the appreciation of asset price, meaning if you have assets, you would have to do nothing, but your wealth would increase, at least nominally. But if you are just relying on your pension, relying on your salary, your purchasing power is reduced, and that is not a very good thing, particularly for young people. The last factor that the young people are seeing, and they are not very comfortable, is the aging population. Medical care is improving so that our age or longevity or the expected age is going to lengthen. But on the other hand, we all know that the pension system, as we know today, is not funded, which means that the young people will have to work harder to support more older people. These are all issues that are facing our young children. They are seeing already in the last 10 years in the United States, there is a survey that says that 1% of the population captured 40% of the wealth created in the last 10 years. And this ratio is double of that of the previous 10. And then on top of that, the possibility of many jobs being eliminated. It begs the question, what is the future? Or what kind of future is facing our younger population? I believe the governments would have to think about at least three things, not that these three things can solve all the problems. First, we have to think about what kind of education, what kind of training we provide to our young people, and indeed not just to young people, but to everybody, to adapt to the new economy. Secondly, governments may want to adopt policies that facilitate the creation of new ventures, the provision of jobs. And thirdly, clearly, with such an environment, the government would be changing their policy a little bit from the last 30 years of a wealth creation bias to a wealth distribution bias. But here, there lies in the dilemma. If there's no safety net, the society is going to go into chaos because there'll be more poor people and more unemployed people as well. But on the other hand, if the safety net is too high, then you're actually discouraging people to venture into new business, to create jobs for themselves and the others. So with this, I thank you, and hopefully you can come up with better solutions.